Welcome to the Fast Mode podcast series. I'm Tara Neil, and with me today is Derek Peterson, CTO of Boingo Wireless. Boingo Wireless is a leading connectivity provider trusted to design, build, and manage high-performance wireless networks. Boingo's vast footprint of distributed antenna systems, Wi-Fi, small cells, and macro towers securely powers innovation and connectivity in airports, transit stations, stadiums, military bases, hospitals, commercial properties, and enterprises worldwide. Derek joins us as part of our exclusive editorial segment on generative AI for network management. Welcome, Derek. Great to have you on today's episode.
It's great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Okay, great. So let's begin. How do AI and GenAI enhance the performance and security of private networks? Does the same apply for public networks?
Yeah, first thing is you want to make sure that your networks are always secure. And so what AI is allowing us to do is recognize threats and understand risks before they happen sometimes. We're able to, since we operate such a vast amount of networks, both private and public networks, in multiple different locations, whether it's, over 100 airports or stadiums, or even on our military bases that we have over 100 of those that we support. We always are finding different threats in each of one of those different locations and verticals. And so what we end up finding is by being able to recognize those, we're able to help and use AI to adjust all of those other networks that maybe haven't seen that threat yet. And so that's been a very important, so it helps us prioritize how we're going to end up attacking these different threats that come up.
Mm-hmm. So apart from security, do you see it, improving the way you manage the performance of the networks?
Definitely. One of the things that we've been doing for a long time is utilizing the data that is available to us to be able to make the networks run better. So a good example I always like to use is at the airports. Sometimes at the airports you might only have a couple of nodes, whether it's a private network node or a Wi-Fi node or a DAS node around a gate area. And normally there's people sitting there waiting for the gates, but the traffic's constantly changing. So all of a sudden you get 400 people coming off of an airplane, and they're trying to connect, and they're trying to check on what they missed and their emails and everything.
Yep.
And so they're trying to get all those connections done, and then the network gets overloaded with all of a sudden 400 people, besides the people who are waiting to get on the plane, an additional 400 people getting off the plane trying to connect. And so what we're able to do is use AI and intelligence around that AI to make dynamic switches to the network so that everybody has a good experience. So you're basically tweaking the network and adjusting behavioral patterns and background software and rules and policy to make it so that the network supports all 800 people. And then as those 400 people move off and the other 400 people move on, and you only have the 10 left, you're now able to then make those dynamic changes so that they're back to utilizing all the speeds that they need to download the video or whatever else that they need to do before their next journey of wherever they're going.
Mm-hmm. And all this happens autonomously, right? Because
Yeah, it does.
the AI engines would just recommend what's going to happen, predict what's going to happen, and then the network fine-tunes itself. So it means that everything's just automated, and it's easy. You can scale it up then. So this is, do you see that with this kind of capabilities, AI capabilities, you can basically scale your services to any level?
Yeah, the nice thing is instead of adjusting like we used to do in the past, where you're always saying, okay, I got to have capacity left over to be able to deal with those issues that come up, that dynamism, and then what you end up doing instead is you end up not having to deal with that capacity overload that you might have, and you're able to do it in real time. So that's really the advantage of AI and machine intelligence that we're able to put in play to be able to make networks better.
Mm-hmm. And in terms of monetization, does it help you to drive monetization as well?
Yeah, we've done some interesting things with that as well. You know, at arenas, a very good example. We recently did a very big arena, and we ended up putting in Wi-Fi DAS and private networks inside there. And they wanted to be able to make it so that people could get into their seats quickly if they need to go get an item from the store, whether it be, you know, a snack, or they want to go buy that shirt that they have, or that waving hand, the thing that they need for that next
Yes.
session of the sport. They can go in using cameras, using the networks, automatically grab the item and walk out. So it's kind of like what you've seen before, where you do these automated check-in and check-outs. So that's been really good at that arena, and it's really brought up the amount of money that you're able to make, because you're letting people basically serve themselves, which is always a good experience, especially if it's got great connectivity. So you can't have that good experience without the great connectivity. So you make sure you have the great connectivity, and then you have that great experience of being able to use those automatic connections and automatic grabbing of different items from the stores.
Yes, yes. So between private and public networks, do you see AI benefiting one more than the other, or does it work the same?
You know, it depends on what you're calling private and public. And it all goes back down to the use cases. So what we try to do is understand all the use cases that are existing inside of a location where we're deploying all these different types of networks. And then once we understand the use cases, it's trying to make sure that the network drills into those use cases and provides the best connection. And so you start off with that opportunity, whatever that is, whether it's, hey, I want to have people be able to get food, or I want to be able to let people download a movie before they get on a plane, or it's, you know, on a military base, and you want to make sure that people are able to get to the videos because they're learning how to speak foreign languages at the foreign language institutes. So you want to make sure that you're building the network for those opportunities or those use cases, and then you're able, by understanding that, you realize that there is a dynamic nature of the network. So it's not always going to only be used for that use case. So then it's applying the AI to be able to deal with the dynamic nature of those changing use cases that are going to happen. So what we find then is, whether it's private or public, you still need that. You need
Yeah.
it for both sides. The private network needs it because it maybe you've got a smart operational thing like, hey, I want to let people use ticketless entry into a venue, whether it's an airport or an arena. And so you want that to work really well. And so because people are coming in and you want that experience to be great.
Yep.
And so that's important on that private network, but just as important is that public network and the person who wants to download that movie before they get on the plane, for example.
Yeah, awesome. So, we have looked at some of the benefits. I think there's one other thing that we see emerging out of this, which is like massive efficiency gains. So these are one of the benefits often talked about when we discuss AI and Gen AI. So how does this apply to your services?
Yeah, I mean, efficiency is always important, you know, whether you're talking about the efficiency of that computer vision solution that you're using to monitor passenger traffic and reduce congestion. That's a very important part of an airport life, is how do I make sure that people can get through the TSA quickly? How do I make sure that they can find the right line to go into? What ticket counters are being optimized, and how to optimize my staffing for that. So there's a lot of smartness that's built into our world today in trying to create these effortless and efficient ways of being able to get through, whether it's, you know, a stadium, or whether it's an airport, or whether it's, you know, all these other use cases. That's a very important part of the AI and how we go about building out the networks and building the AI to support it.
Wow. And now that we have Gen AI, right, what are the more interesting or exciting things that we can do?
Yeah, I mean, for us, you know, Gen AI has always been an important part of being able to have those interactions with other people, because a lot of people think through and how they're going to react to a situation. By having that verbal cueing is an important part of the way they want to respond to the efficiencies that you're trying to create for them. So the key thing there is, how do you manage the data that you're collecting to be able to make sure that it's secure? Because you're going to be looking at people's faces to try to understand if they're happy or they're sad, which is an important part of it. And then you're going to be verbally responding to those requests in the GenAI with large language models or other capabilities. And so you want to try to make sure that you recognize that they're allowing you to get a picture of their face or record their audio so that you can end up providing a better experience. And so securing that is a very important part of it, of making sure that as you're putting in something like some of these Gen AI models, that you're recognizing that security is a big part of that as well.
Wow. Sounds great. You shared about some of the use cases already. You talked about stadium, airports, and all that. By far, what are some of the other use cases that you would consider very successful?
Wow, there's a lot. So I'm trying to think about some other ones. We've done some convention centers that are challenging. And so when you're dealing with a convention center, you might end up you have multiple different people coming through the convention center, and one week it's a convention, it's a high-tech convention. The next week it's maybe a low-tech convention, and so you end up having to adjust for each one. And that's sometimes one of the challenges is recognizing that not everybody is as high-tech as you think that they are, and so you have to build the solution around the audience that you're trying to support. And it's very true for sure in a convention center as well.
Wow. Okay, so that's really insightful. So I was thinking, what are the challenges that you see when you want to bring AI and Gen AI into your solutions? Also, in managing that new workloads brought by AI and Gen AI. So what's your take on that?
I mean, we kind of alluded to it a little bit earlier. Probably one of the biggest challenges is understanding the data that you're bringing in. So you've got to manage that appropriately. You got to store it appropriately, and then you got to protect it appropriately. And the challenge is there's a massive amount of data. And so one of the things that we're working on is, we've always had an edge capability. So we've had some edge compute, some edge storage, and some edge management functions, management network functions that we control. But we also had policy that was centralized in some kind of a data lake or a larger policy, centralized policy location. So we've done this kind of centralized policy with decentralized execution with the edge. What we're finding now is with the amount of data that you're starting to gather, whether it's from cameras and, you're starting to get, thousands of points of presence on your face to be able to make sure that you can see things like happy and sad, that before it was just trying to do identification. Now you're trying to do a lot more with that visual. And so because of that, there's a lot of data, and trying to bring all that data back to a centralized location to make a policy decision is not usually what you want to do, because that's just a lot of data to try to bring back. So what we're seeing is the changing of our borderless infrastructure that we created, where we're starting to do a lot more edge servicing of that data. So the data fabric, which used to be, highly centralized, is now becoming highly decentralized. So not only is the data fabric now decentralized, now some of that decision policy that you had that was centralized, you have to push some of that centralized policy down into the edge locations as well. So it's getting to be a lot of fun managing now security across not only your centralized data,
Yes.
but also all your decentralized locations of your data and policy as well.
So what are the some of the threats or security incidents or events that you see might
Yeah.
challenge the deployments?
Yeah, I mean that's the key thing. Is understanding those risks, and might is a great word. I because so far, we've been fairly fortunate. We haven't had any significant of these significant threats hit our system because we're very cautious, and we kind of we have to be because we do support critical infrastructure. Whether if you're at an airport, it's a critical infrastructure. It's got to keep running. They're used for bomb shelters and other kind of things that might happen. Weather activities that might happen, and so they need to always be available. And same thing with stadiums, these large stadiums, and of course military bases. Are very important for maintaining that security. So when I think about threats, the biggest threat that I think about is really making sure that we recognize that we're operating this critical infrastructure and making sure every day you wake up and think about security and you're thinking about that data. You're thinking about what you're collecting, what you're storing, and how important it is to protect it. And you're making sure that you're thinking about that. And that's why it always starts, in my mind, with understanding the use cases, right? If you understand the use cases and the opportunities that the connectivity is bringing, then you can end up securing that. So you're going to secure, a camera different than you're going to secure a connected thermostat, different than you're going to secure a public user using the Wi-Fi. And so you've got to recognize and that each one of those attack vectors, those threats onto the network, has to be separated and segmented. But just as important is understanding what the operations of that thermostat normally are and making sure that you're monitoring and managing for that. Instead of trying to manage the network as a whole, you're managing it around all of these use cases that are running on top of that network.
So when you're handling so much data, especially customer data, right? So how does the responsibility go between, say, Boingo and the customer? Who takes care of that data and the security of it? Because essentially it's their data, right? So
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
it's a joint thing usually.
Okay.
Usually, what's going to happen, whether it depends on the relationship that we have with that specific venue. Some venues have a very sophisticated security department, and so we're an augment to it on the network side. Other venues that we support don't have that, and so we are their security team. We're their security operations center, so we run the SOC for them, and as well as the network operations center for them. And it really depends on the venue and their sophistication. But at the end of the day, you can't point the fingers because security is everybody's responsibility. So it's my responsibility, as the CISO for Boingo, just as much as it is the airport IT director's responsibility as the CISO for that airport. So we both share in that responsibility together to make sure we're covered, because the weakest link is always the one that you got to watch out for.
Yeah.
So you don't want either side to be the weak link.
Yes, amazing, amazing. Well, I think, yeah, we covered quite a bit today, and we are now at the end of our session. So thank you, Derek, for joining us and for sharing all these awesome insights, especially on AI and generative AI, as well as the challenges that you talked about very well. So thank you so much.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Awesome. Okay, and to everyone tuning in, thank you for listening. If you guys want to learn more, visit www.boingo.com and follow us for more updates and insights as we continue to uncover the latest in technology and telecommunications. See you in our next session. Bye-bye.